Okay, so the lives of women in the colonies, objectives and standards, to compare the lives of women in colonial times to the present, and analyze the lives and challenges that women face in colonial times. Take a moment here to read the standards. Desired result. How would you describe the lives of colonial women? Vocabulary. Malaria is a potentially deadly disease transmitted by mosquitoes. Livestock or farm animals that can be used for money. Flax is a plant that has a seed and whose stalk is used to make textile fiber. Midwife, someone, typically a woman, trained to assist women in childbirth. Indentured servant is when a person is contracted to work for another person for a certain period of time, typically in exchange for passage to another country and without pay. And a captive is something that has been captured and cannot escape. Desired result. What were the lives of colonial women like in the time period? So living with fear and sickness. Women in the colonies lived with many different challenges. Many colonists dealt with extreme weather, especially hot and humid summers, and they also dealt with the very deadly disease of malaria. They also feared attacks by Native Americans, and very few traveled beyond the walls of their settlements due to fears of attacks. Many colonists had little experience hunting or finding plants they could eat, and during the early colonial years, many colonists died of sickness or starvation. The colonies will be tested. The colonists were not used to the day-to-day survival of their new lives. People of different backgrounds and skills were thrown together to survive. And despite the unknown, the colonists held strong, and some actually received help from Native Americans who taught them how to plant corn. Colonial women at work. Most colonial women spent their days doing the following: cleaning, doing laundry, collecting firewood, tending to vegetables or livestock, and caring for children. The preparation of food could involve baking bread, churning cream to make butter, harvesting vegetables and fruits, butchering livestock, or making beverages. Women frequently brought items from England with them, such as soap and candles, to help them with their daily tasks. Constant work could lead to boredom, and women sometimes did chores in groups together, which could allow for gossiping and exchanging news. Women also could save time by trading with their neighbors or having their daughters help with chores. Taking care of children. Having and raising children was seen as very important, a very important role of women in colonial America. Some women, were married in their teenage years and began raising families in New England. Most women had 8 to 9 children, every 2 to 3 years. However, childbirth could be very dangerous, and many women died as a result of it. Complications from childbirth resulted in the deaths of every 1 in 8 women, and mothers also feared the deaths of their children as well. Disease and accidents result in about 50% of children deaths before the age of 5. Midwives frequently helped assist women in childbirth until about 1750, along with the help of family and friends. Raising a family. Soon after giving birth, many women returned to their daily chores. Older daughters would frequently help their mothers with infants. Pardon me. Wealthy women had servants who helped care for the home and children, and those who were wealthy women also had more time to educate their children. However, it was frequently more boys that were taught how to read and write, while girls were taught how to be good wives and mothers. The life of an indentured servant. There were many poor young English that came to the colonies, and colonists who could not afford the journey could sign a contract as what is known as an indentured servant. They would agree to work a certain number of years, typically 4 to 7, for a master in the colonies, and women actually made up about 1/3 of indentured servants in the colonies. Most indentured servants were women who did domestic chores. Indentured servants were not allowed to marry until their service was complete, Women indentured servants typically would then marry another male indentured servant, but their lives were very difficult and sometimes deadly. Uh, those who were indentured servants were typically given some days off, and most of them spent their free time in pubs or gambling. They faced hard lives and worked with very little breaks. Some were beaten or denied food if they slacked off work or even refused to work. Some indentured servants sometimes died before the end of their service, or they were sold to others for longer time. So they, it might be the end of indentured servants' service, and they might be sold to someone else and have to start all over again with 7 years or so. Women who were indentured servants could be forced to have relationships with their masters and sometimes had children. Time that was lost to pregnancy was added more time to an indentured servant's service. There was actually a case where an indentured servant in Maryland, Elizabeth Green, actually aborted her child to prevent extending her service, and she was later executed for infanticide, or killing her baby, in 1664. So, wild frontiers in colonial women. Life on the frontier away from the East Coast was more dangerous and brutal. There was little protection from attacks, no schools, no doctors, and most frontier families lived in log cabins and survived on what they could, make and grow. Both men and women had to know how to use a musket for protection, because sometimes women were taken as captives by Native Americans. An example of this was Mary Jemison. She was captured by members of the Seneca Nation at the age of 12. But later on, she went on to marry a Seneca man, had a family with him, and lived with the tribe until her death in 1833. So sometimes colonial women were adapted into Native American society and became part of that culture as well. So our closure, how would you describe the lives of colonial women? Let us know if you have any questions or comments, and we'll talk to you soon.